Welcome in to the name Undetermined College Football Show on MNS. Again, maybe this is just is the name, like maybe that's just it. I'm also praying that this microphone is working. Also, yes, I am wearing a beanie in September. Why? I'm very self-conscious. So anyway, let's get into past week of college football. Yeah, fully intended to post a preview show last week. Just didn't happen. Gotta be honest with you. Time got away. Uh, College students understand. So, unfortunately, the biggest story this past weekend, and I'm going to go relatively rapid fire here. Officiating. Very bad on the part of the vast majority of officiating crews, and I have now heard a lot of speculation, specifically from Josh Bate this week, that this was very pointed because it's not your typical bad calls like, a missed pass interference or things like that. Well, I mean, there was a egregious missed face mask in the Georgia Kentucky game, but you know, there was also the recurring trend. I'll use a specific one in that game. Roughing the passer. Oh no. Like, what is happening? Please don't let this continue. This reminds me year period of time in the NFL, and this is still a problem. Like, I remember it was either last year that Garrett had that really bad roughing the passer on the sack against Brady. Like, that was egregious. But like, I remember like Packers fan, but I remember like the situation where like Clay Matthews like had multiple critical QB hits like wiped off because of unfortunate officiating, and that was kind of the trend this week because we saw a lot of not just clean QB hits, like for instance in the case of the Georgia game, uh, where defender just, I mean, ball is just releasing out of the hand and he is in the chest of Carson Beck, or sorry, not Carson, but Brock Vandegrift. We saw penalties on straight up sacks. I'm sorry, man. I'm not even one of the people that believes I'm like I understand that like you want to kind of protect the quarterback and since they stay stationary, yeah, you don't necessarily want guys like trying to kill them, but like I feel like it needs to be egregious to call any kind of personal foul on just an actual sack. But he has the ball. You as the defender are tackling him. You should not be penalized for that. And the worst one, unfortunately, was in arguably the game of the week. South Carolina and LSU in the 12 o'clock window. 12 o'clock? Yes. South Carolina. Go Cox. Right? Yeah, unfortunate weekend for them. So this is a awesome, awesome, awesome game. South Carolina absolutely rocketed out into the lead, and I say that pointedly because to me, this is the best Rocket Sanders has looked since 2022. He looks healthy. He looks like he's got that extra gear back. I've always been a huge fan of him when he was at Arkansas, and so I'm glad to see him playing so well at South Carolina. Yeah, you know, Williams-Brice Stadium, incredible environment. South Carolina gets out to the huge lead. They start to bear down on LSU, but eventually LSU climbs their way back into the game. And then we get down to the critical moments of the game. Nussmeier throws what should be a pick six. Like, I think it was on like the 8 or something like that. But he throws a pick six deep in South Carolina territory. They run it all the way back, and it's called back because Garrett Nussmeier, after throwing the interception, actively makes an attempt to run at the ball carrier. He is blocked to the ground, and a personal foul is called. That's not football, man. Like, I understand that what probably happened this week was because of what happened to Tua on Thursday Night Football. By the way, I am praying that Tua is okay regardless. I am scared to see him play football again. I know he intends to, and I want the guy to be able to live out his dreams, but at some point you have to hang him up. But um, just egregious call, and it shifted the outcome of the game. And South Carolina already had enough tilted against them in this game, really. I mean, first off, I mean, you blow a 17-0 lead, like the momentum's already tilted against you, and that's that's their own fault, right? You shouldn't let LSU back into the game. Uh, then losing Lenore Sellers, man. If they don't lose him, they win this game. But they should have probably won the game anyway. And then obviously it comes out LSU takes the lead. They miss the field goal at the end. LSU survives. First time they had to go to Williams-Brice since 2008. And I couldn't help but think this over and over and over again. And I was so happy to hear again Josh Pate on his college football show point this out. But you've waited since 2008. Who knows when you'll get LSU back in your house if you're South Carolina? This is the biggest game, probably the biggest environment they've had there in years, like a long, long time. I feel like this game was the culmination, like of Shane Beamer's time with the program up to that point, and it should have been an incredible moment. And had they just lost the game, blown the lead, that would have sucked. But the fact that officiating played such a massive role in this thing and an objectively bad call. We're not talking about you shouldn't have called that there type deal. No, this is just a bad call. It should not have been called at any stage of the game, but especially not with the game on the line, man. That was terrible. And we saw it all across college football. Um, all I'll say is I understand we talk about point of emphasis with the NFL. It seems like the NFL is sort of bearing back down on like celebrations and stuff like that this year. Everyone knows that that's what you watch week one of the NFL. There is something that is going to be penalized disproportionately. Um, and I'm hoping that that was just a point of emphasis for this week because these college officials are not paid enough. They're not full-time employees. The games should not fall so much into their hands to where you have these sort of gray area calls where they're like, okay, well, the league office kind of insinuated that I should make a call here. The rules say that nothing that took place was illegal, but so like, what do you do? Genuinely, what do you do if you're an official? So no, I'm not sitting here trashing those guys. Like, it's not their fault that they have to make these calls. Like even the bad ones, they're put in an untenable situation. They're not well trained enough. Like they're not like they need to be full time employees, and we'd avoid a lot of these issues. But I think this is more of a like Kirby Smart hinted at it, but this is probably more of a the different conferences pushing agendas. So unfortunate kind of damper on way to damper the weekend, but there was a lot of interesting football that took place this weekend. Also, so I'll go ahead and finally say LSU does escape the South Carolina game, and even though officiating played a large role, they still were the ones that had to climb back into the game on the road in a tough environment. Uh, so all credit to them, and they have not played their best football. Garrett Nussmeier, I thought, was pretty good. Garrett Nussmeier's better than he played on Saturday. He's better than he's played all year. I think this offense is going to grow. Um, you worry a little bit about the defense, especially with the critical injuries to like the interior defensive line. But look, South Carolina, that might, and this sucks, but that might be the best game of football. That might be the best 60 minutes of football they play all year, and LSU somehow survived that. So kudos to them. A team that did not survive was Wisconsin. Yeah, Alabama just skull drugged those guys. It looked like maybe early on it could be a game. I wasn't particularly fooled into thinking it could be. And then Tyler Van Dyke gets hurt, like, I think it was like 5 minutes into the game, and you're just like, yeah. And Alabama does what Alabama does. And people might say, well, you can't say that. Saban's not there anymore. They're not that Alabama anymore. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Yeah, no, they very much are. And Jalen Milroe, he's starting, in my opinion, he's starting to do enough to sort of validate my preseason, like, sort of Heisman hype. So who knows? Maybe he'll be featured on my Heisman top four later. Huh? Ryan Williams, that kid's so good. It's ridiculous. Like, I'm 21 years old and I'm sitting in my room at home talking about football, and that kid is 17 years old and he is in Bolitnikoff talks, starting for the University of Alabama. That guy is so, 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 so good. Yes, I am bitter that he didn't choose us. I remember in all the offseason, especially when the rumors started flying, I was like, oh, he's got drop issues. And you know what I immediately thought of? Jamar Chase's first NFL offseason, or first NFL preseason. He's got drop issues. I said, oh no. Then by the end of camp, the air was shifted. It's like, oh, this kid's kind of a freak. He was drawing Julio Jones comparisons, talking about the impact that he was having on the offense and the program. Yeah, every single bit of it has been validated. Ryan Williams might be the best receiver in the country. But like, I'm not saying that he definitively is. He's in the conversation. And for a 17-year-old kid, that is incredible. So I love what I see out of Alabama at the moment, and the truth is, I wasn't scared by the USF game either. Like, they've had so many woes across the offensive line, and this time it's not because they're just playing bad like they were last year. Like, they've had three critical injuries to not just their starting two tackles, but then the guy that slid over and started, and I want to say he started in Proctor's spot in the USF game, but I could be totally mistaken about that. But then he gets hurt, but then he comes back in the USF game, and then they start to bear down. So you kind of go like, oh, yeah, it's just a health issue. Like, they have their guys, and they were the healthiest they've been all year when they went out to Madison and just completely emptied out Camp Randall. I don't want to say emptied out. That might be unfair to say. I like they embarrassed Wisconsin, which I was not remotely shocked by. So Jalen Milroe, again, good. Kalen DeBoer, great little road win. You know, that Wisconsin has enough to, somewhat challenge you. And Alabama was unfazed. That's a national championship contending team right there. Unfortunately, a couple teams that are not contending for a national championship reside in the state of Florida, man. Okay. I'll talk about Florida first because I think their situation is a little more imminent. Yeah, Billy Napier is going to lose his job. That sucks so bad. I think he's a good football coach. This People might kind of roll their eyes when I say this. I kind of feel very similarly to him the way I felt about Brian Harsin. I think Brian Harsin was a pretty good football coach. Just for whatever reason, did not coalesce into building a good program. Uh, there's been a lot that has not gone Billy Napier's way, and it means talking about management and things like that. But uh, yeah, year three, no signs of life at all from the Florida Gators. Napier's probably out the door. Uh, that it just sucks. I had very, very, very high hopes. I know the rumors already started about Lane going there. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. I just want to say, for the record, Napier's going to bounce back. I don't know what he's going to do. I don't know if he's going to return to maybe the G5 levels in head coach, or maybe even like I think there are some teams that might evaluate what he did at Florida and say like, oh well, we're so and so relatively smaller Power Five school. He'd be a perfect fit here. Billy Napier is a good head coach, and a lot of what Florida has in place up there is good. I don't to show up completely lifeless in two straight big home games. Yeah, in a prove it year, he's done. Whether I think that's right or wrong. Now, the other guy, Mike Norvell, he's not close to done. He's fine. He's a great head coach. That team sucks. But I say they suck. They're not a team, man. Like I think everyone got fooled. They have a lot of NFL type talent and athletes on the team, but that's it. They got outplayed in most phases of the game by Memphis. Now I know everyone wants to blame DJ, and don't get me wrong, man. Like I'll be real, DJ has been pretty bad. Like he has not developed as a passer since his time at Clemson, and that sucks. He's got all the physical traits that you would need, and I thought that he had the upstairs. He seemed like a cool, calm, collected, poised guy, but for whatever reason, it hasn't amalgamated to playing good quarterback. But a good team can still at least maybe beat Memphis with subpar quarterback play, but no, this team sucks. And it's probably a wasted season for Florida State. Mike Norvell is going to have to reevaluate the way he does things up there. And that's all I have to say about that. So I will now quickly, I won't say too much about UGA and Kentucky. Kentucky actually was able to control the pace of the game. Georgia was dealing with a lot of depth issues. Michael Williams did not start and play the game. And then number 93, I'm sorry, guys, I'm struggling with names at the moment. It's too early in the year for me. he also struggled. Tate Ratledge also left the game and eventually ended up in a boot on the sideline. So, ugly, ugly, ugly game. Terrible, in my opinion, play calling on Kentucky's second to last offensive drive and then the punt. That's a loser call. I agree with what the guys on Cover 3 said. That's just a loser call. But Georgia escapes in a rock fight. They lose the number one spot, though, because Texas looked unstoppable against UTSA. To be fair, not a good UTSA team, but the big takeaway, of course, Quinn Ewers gets hurt. Arch Manning steps in and is awesome. Not remotely shocked by that. Uh, I will go ahead and say, though, especially now that the reports are out that Quinn is probably not going to be out for that long, Quinn Ewers is still my number one for the Heisman. And I'll go ahead and run through my Heisman top four real quick. I still have Quinn Ewers up top. Uh, and I still actually have Ashton Genty at two. Because, I mean, he didn't play last week. He didn't do anything to prove to me that he's not the freak that he's shown us to be. And number three is still the freshman, Dylan Stewart. I still think that guy's a transcendent talent. I'm not saying that Heisman voters would have him anywhere close to the top four. I'm just talking about, in my opinion, we talk about players that I would personally vote for this award, which doesn't mean anything. I don't have a vote for a reason, you know? Dylan Stewart is my number three. The only change is at number four. Jalen Milroe, as I mentioned earlier, does finally appear on the list. In my preseason predictions, I predicted him to win the Heisman, and now I'm starting to see enough to at least kind of validate what I thought. Again, Nico hasn't necessarily done anything to make me sit there and go like, "Oh, well, he's not it," and Matt, he's not here on the show right now, but Jackson Dart, he hasn't done anything to make me sit there and go, "He's not it." Carson Beck didn't play a great game, but who knows? He could light it up down the stretch just like he did last year and enter back into these talks. Shedeur Sanders, I know people are out on him. I'm not totally out on him as a Heisman candidate. I'm just telling you that I think it's Jalen Milroe, man. And honestly, I still firmly believe out of these top four, Jalen Milroe would be my guy that if I'm projecting forward is going to win the Heisman. So there we go. I guess I'll leave it at that as far as the Heisman race goes. Also, I want to quickly touch on Oregon and Notre Dame. They finally get rolling. Oregon kind of embarrassed Oregon State down the stretch. They finally leaned on them. That was good to see. Notre Dame showed signs of life. So that was nice to see them bounce back from what was an embarrassing weekend last weekend. And that's what they do. That's what they did under Brian Kelly and have done under Marcus Freeman so far. If they suffer a bad loss, they typically answer back. They just got to cut out the bad losses part of it. So there's that. But all around, solid weekend of college football. Unfortunately, mired back by terrible officiating. It sucks. We shouldn't. The national college football discourse should not have anything to do with the guys in pinstripes, man. Not pinstripes, I guess, just stripes, zebras. You get what I'm saying? So that sucks. And one last thing, because I did touch on it, it's not college football. I'm so sad about Tua. He's one of my favorite college football players ever. Yes, even as an Alabama fan, I've always admired the person that he is. And I always felt like he was a little bit underrated, especially going into the draft process. I saw people this is coming off the Joe Burrow year. I think everyone got drafted where they needed to be, but Tua was a much better college football player than I think people are giving him credit for right now. Tua has been a much better NFL player than a lot of people would like to give him credit for. And that guy lives and breathes football. And it sucks because right now that guy is being faced with the decision of, do I give everything I have to this game, or do I give this game up, which is everything to me? So I hate that for Tua. I'm praying for him. And we will have a preview show out for week 4 soon. That will happen this week, I promise. So thank you for watching. This has been Name, To Be Determined College Football Show. I have been Will. Thank you for watching.